Welcome to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and seated next to me we have Professor Aubrey. And this week we are going to be talking about what I feel is getting to become kind of a lost art. We're going to be talking about, once again, our favorite television show theme songs.
Nice. Once again.
It's a topic we have talked about, but many moons ago.
Okay.
But there's nothing wrong with revisiting topics because in the world of podcasting, every episode's going to be new for somebody, right?
Well, that's true, and it'll be new because we won't remember what we said before, so we might say the same thing, but we might not. We might say completely different things.
Damn right. Podcasting. Gotta love it.
Podcasting today.
But as two people in the middle-aged bracket, we've both seen a number of TV shows over the years, and the older you get, the more you're able to sort out the wheat from the chaff when it comes to a good TV show theme song. Now, before we dive into our list, like for you, and I'm not talking about any show in particular, just a general question, what makes a TV show theme song memorable to you?
I think it's just the enjoyment of it, whether I like listening to it or not. And if I do, then I remember it. And if I don't, then I don't remember it.
Very simply put, I definitely agree myself. I mean, it's all about good music. There are plenty of, it's like people that want to like dismiss the artistry in like commercials, for instance. There are so many commercials that are made 99% of the time. They do their job telling you about the product they're selling, and then you forget about them. But then there's going to be that 1% that will stick with you. That does end up meaning something. And I think it's kind of the same with TV show theme songs. And they give you an emotional connection to the show that you like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So how about I dive into my list?
That sounds great.
All right. Now, I'm going to read off a little monologue here that starts off the official theme song that's going to top my list here. And I got to say it in a special voice.
Of course you do.
In 1972, a crack commando unit was sent to prison by a military court for a crime they didn't commit. These men promptly escaped from a maximum security stockade to the Los Angeles underground. Today, still wanted by the government, they survive as soldiers of fortune. If you have a problem, if no one else can help, and if you can find them, maybe you can hire the A-Team.
Dun, da, 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 da.
I mean, you can't go wrong when you're a kid, when you're a young guy growing up, and a TV show theme song after a monologue like that kicks off with machine gun fire, and then the most rousing music you can think of. Like, it's just great music. It's one of the legendary theme songs created by Mike Post. I don't know if you're familiar with his name.
No?
But he is the creator of such theme songs as like the Rockford Files, Law and Order, the Believe It or Not, I'm Walking on Air, Hill Street Blues, like most major television shows from the 70s and 80s and even the 90s that you can think of probably had a Mike Post theme song added onto it. And this TV show, I will be the first to say the show itself does not stand the test of time. It does not. Looking back on it now, it does look like a very small TV budget.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not the best acting, not the best special effects or anything like that. But what I've always loved about the show was the premise. I think, as far as an action story goes, an idea of like soldiers that were wronged that want to help people, make right in the world for other people. I think that's one hell of a great idea for like an action TV show. I'm surprised that they haven't come back with some sort of a reboot, whether it be a soft reboot or a hard reboot. Soft reboot being that, Mr. T as B.A. Baracus would show up again at some point.
Mm-hmm.
I can probably guess pretty well here. You probably weren't a big fan of the A-Team, right?
No.
Yeah. But for me, I guess especially as a kid, it was always just the fun, the adventure that I liked about that TV show. Again, the show itself has now stood the test of time. I'm not searching out old episodes of the A-Team, but I mean, that is one hell of a great theme song.
It's anthematic.
It is. You want to pump your fists in the air, and if you had a machine gun, you'd be firing in the air yourself.
Especially if you had a beret on.
Yeah, the machine gun and a beret at age 9 in the 80s. Like, watch out, people.
Oh, yeah.
A kid with a machine gun in Grand Rapids fired upstairs and hit his adopted sister in the toe. Anyway.
Okay, can I go with my first one?
You definitely can. Go ahead.
Okay. My first one is the Detectorists, a 2014 British production.
Which we did a watch along with on the pilot episode on Prince Talking Nerdy. That is in our archives.
Nice. You should go back and watch that because it's really great. And it's by Johnny Flynn, who is quite an impressive. Like, I heard the song because I was watching the show, but I loved the song so much I had to figure out who sang it and what it was. And so I went to the trouble of figuring that out, and I discovered it was this guy named Johnny Flynn. And then I discovered that Johnny Flynn had a band called the Sussex Wit. So it was Johnny Flynn and the Sussex Wit, which is like such an English name. And the song is basically about it's unclear. The show itself is an enigma, and I think the meaning of the theme song is also quite unclear. But it could mean many things, and it's a beautiful melody.
Well, in terms of being unclear, if you think about the idea of the show where you have people that are constantly using stuff like metal detectors to look for treasures, having something be unclear, I think would go along with the whole premise of the show, really, because, you're looking for that something, and, look at me being poetic.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I think you're right. Anyway, it's a great song.
Yes, when we did the watch along, we did not watch it beforehand to take notes and then comment upon it. So I did not hear the theme song myself. So woe is me on that. I guess all will not be right in the world until I fix that.
That's right.
Yeah, with a Sussex wit.
Sussex Wit.
Yeah, right. Anything else you want to say about the Detectorists?
No, just a great show. Great song.
Yes, available on YouTube.
Yes, nice.
Yep. All right. I will go on with my next one. Baby, if you've ever wondered whatever became of me, I'm living on the air in Cincinnati. Cincinnati, WKRP. I like this. The show itself is forgettable in a lot of ways, but again, one hell of a great theme song. I love I even have it on my playlist at work. So this shows you how much I like that, but it does have that vibe of like, for what I can remember, like early 80s radio. It feels like a jingle, especially, WKRP in Cincinnati. I mean, how they sing that is just so great. But I did do some research on the show and found out a band we both like actually had a major hit thanks to that show.
Who?
Blondie, Heart of Glass.
Oh, wow.
That ended up becoming a big hit thanks to being included on an episode. And in fact, I forgot which location in the show has it, but the band actually gave them a gold record that they, hung up on the wall, and it's part of the scenery and all that stuff. But I think one big problem with WKRP was the fact that when the show first ran, they did have first run music. There was apparently a loophole that shows that recorded on VHS and not film could license music much cheaper. And so during the original run of WKRP in the first couple of years of syndication after the show went off the air, they had songs like Heart of Glass from Blondie. They even had a special episode. I don't know why they did this, but in 1979 or 1980, I believe, there was a Who concert in Cincinnati for real. And it was general admission seating or basically like first come, first serve. And the arena where they were playing was they made the bad decision of really only having one set of doors open. And so there was a stampede and people ended up dying. And so they ended up featuring that on the show with the Who's music. But again, later in the years, as those licensing deals went away, they had to start using stock music.
Uh-huh.
And like I can see to where someone just catching up with WKRP in Cincinnati today could watch that and just go, I don't get it.
Uh-huh.
Because you're taking an original part. Because also, too, there would be times, too, where they would play a song that we would all know, like, let's say Heart of Glass again, just for example's sake, but then they would have the characters talking over that as well. And because of the licensing issues later in syndication, not only did they have to put in stock music to replace the music that they didn't have the license for anymore, but they had to hire actors that sounded like the original actors. Apparently, they couldn't even get the original actors to come in and like ADR their lines.
Mm-hmm.
ADR is something in Hollywood to where, like C-3PO, for instance, during the original Star Wars movies with the helmet over his head, you could, if you watch like behind the scenes footage, he sounds like he's talking into a coffee can.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not going to fly. So Anthony Daniels later via ADR would record his lines and then they would add it to the movie that way. So that's what I mean by ADR. But overall,
What does it stand for, though?
You mean you don't know? I
No.
mean, what is wrong with you, girl? Automatic dialogue replacement.
Automatic dialogue replacement. So then is it some kind of technology that senses where that cut should happen so that you don't even have to do it manually?
I mean, with today's technology, who knows? Back in the day, it was just a matter of essentially taking out the sound from the rough footage and then replacing it with the new, but you have to time it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's ultimately what happened with WKRP and why I think, it's a show that's kind of faded, in the public eye. But do you have any memories of WKRP in Cincinnati?
I loved that show. I thought it was very funny. It dealt with some like adult topics, I think. I thought when I mean, it must have been like 10 when this was on. Because when was it on?
Uh, like late 70s, early 80s. I think the original show was canceled in 82.
Okay, so I was like 8 when it was on the air.
Mm-hmm.
But I watched it in syndication much, much later than that. And yeah, I liked the guy who played the wacky DJ.
Dr. Johnny Fever
Yes, Dr. Johnny Fever.
from played by Howard Hessman.
Mm-hmm.
Venus Flytrap, of course, from Tim Reed. My favorite episode of that show, though, it's one that it's similar to Charlie Murphy's True Hollywood Stories, Chappelle Show, to where I can watch this episode again and get a great laugh, but it's the Thanksgiving episode. The the owner of the radio station wanted to do a special Thanksgiving event for the radio station, and his bright idea was, how people would sometimes release doves.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to release turkeys, but
Mm.
turkeys, he released them from a helicopter in the air. Turkeys don't fly.
Ah.
And so you had the Les Nessman, who was the news reporter, essentially doing a spoof on the radio reporter that did the Hindenburg disaster. Like, oh my God, they're falling from the sky, and just turkeys everywhere. And again, I laughed. You're probably not laughing at home. You're not laughing right now, but it's a funny episode. I'll tell you that.
No, it sounds funny.
Yeah.
It sounds like worth watching.
Indeed. Indeed. Speaking of worth watching, what's your number 2?
Okay, my number 2 is The Office, the British original from 2001, which is way hard to believe that it's been that long, but it has been that long since the original Office. And it just got a great British theme song. And the whole opening sequence is really sort of austere office park. The song really connects with that, and it's a nice backdrop for sort of how you feel about the people. the song makes you feel like, oh, these are working class people in a place in the middle of nowhere, which is true. That's what they were. The name of the song is Handbags and Glad Rags, and it's by the band Big George. You should go listen to it. It's worth listening to for sure.
Yeah, I've never seen that version of the show. I've only seen a season and a half of the American version myself.
Really.
Yeah.
Well, the British version is the first one that I saw, and I was very resistant to the American version. But when I started watching it, I absolutely fell in love with it. What's interesting is that the first season for both is exactly the same, frame for frame, dialogue for dialogue. And it's amazing to watch the different interpretations of the same characters.
Yeah, I do remember there was an article I read that was detailing like British shows that had been redone in America, and they brought up Spaced. There was actually a pilot that they made for an American version of Spaced, and I never saw the light of day. On YouTube, you can get like clips of like small scenes from that, and you can see why it failed. And the big reason why it failed was that the American people didn't want to have anything to do with the creative minds behind the original show.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas with, not only the American version of The Office, but there are versions of The Office around the world, because it's really such an open premise that you can adopt it for any country, really.
And yet no one had thought of doing it before that.
You would think, but in terms of the American Office, Ricky Gervais and Stephen Merchant were involved in that show as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you're gonna do a remake, I mean, remakes happen all the time. It's something that's been happening for years. But if you're not consulting with the original creative minds, if they're still available, of course, then why are you doing it?
Mm-hmm. And how can you think that it's going to turn out well?
We could talk about Norman Lear stuff, but that would interfere with one choice on your list coming up. But anyway, did you want me to go on to my next choice here?
Yeah, let's go on to your next choice.
All right. My next choice was a show that was only on for 2 years, from the 85, 86, and 86, 87 seasons on ABC, created by Alan Spencer, a name you've not heard of before, but he was a young protege of Mr. Mel Brooks.
Mm-hmm.
As a teenager, he actually snuck onto the set of Young Frankenstein, and Marty Feldman, Igor, the guy with the eye, ended up catching him, but, taking him under his wing, and that's how he met Mel Brooks and everything like that. But this is a TV show that I absolutely adore. First caught it a few years back on YouTube, and I love the hell out of it. It's a show that was 20, 30 years ahead of its time. It didn't deserve to be on a network. It should have been, it would have been a perfect streaming show or something like that, but it's Sledge Hammer.
Sledge Hammer.
Yeah. It's a satire on essentially the Dirty Harry idea of a rogue cop, taking justice into his own hands. But kind of like the whole Mel Brooks Get Smart thing, they take it to absurd levels. Like the first episode of the very first episode, the pilot, they had Sledge Hammer hears on the radio, like, there's a sniper on the roof at this building, and he shows up, and then the other cops are like, hey, you can't go over there. This is a sniper. He's going to hurt you. And Sledgehammer's like, I'll take it. It's like, trust me, I know what I'm doing. He goes to his car, pulls out a bazooka, walks up, the sniper shooting at him and missing, and then Sledgehammer blows up the building, and then just walks away. I loved the absurdity of that. It's like they didn't go the Police Academy route and make it gags, but the fact that they took what, because like normally a cop taking justice into his own hands would have just, took it out of his own gun and fired and, took care of the guy that way, but just blowing up the entire building, it's just going that extra absurd level is, makes the jokes that much funnier. But the theme song in question was actually Danny Elfman's first theme song.
Really?
Yeah, I guess I don't know if he was still with Oingo Boingo at this time, but yeah, this was a couple of years before he ended up doing The Simpsons. I know, um, of course, by this time, I believe he had already done work with Tim Burton with the Pee Wee Herman movies
Mm-hmm.
and things like that. But I believe I've shown you a couple episodes of Sledgehammer, but I don't think this is the type of show that would have captured your attention.
No, I remember watching Sledgehammer and not being impressed with it. It was it's like watching Wonder Woman. It's like something I could see remembering was much better than it actually was.
For me, I love this show. The creator Alan Spencer has done some great stuff over the years, but it's just my type of humor, weird and quirky. And again, taking the exaggeration of a joke and then making it even bigger. I definitely love that. But if you don't have any other thoughts, how about you dive into your third choice?
Sure, my third choice is Good Times
Speaking of Norman Lear.
from 1974. It ran for 5 seasons, and the song was written specifically for the show. I don't know by whom. I should look that up. But
I'm going to say it with authority.
it is the title of the theme is Good Times, and it is performed by Jim Gilstrap and Blinky Williams.
Blinky?
Blinky Williams.
All right.
Yeah.
You can call me Blinky.
Ain't you lucky you got 'em? Good times, I just love the whole premise of that show, and so therefore the premise of the song, which was you could be poor and not have anything, but still have like interesting shit going on in your life and important relationships.
Yeah, I like in this country, especially, that you get drilled in your head that, the only way you can be quote unquote successful is to have lots and lots of money. But we've seen what that does to people too.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, like, I believe that there is a balance, but you do, like, why would you want to obtain all the wealth in the world and not take advantage of some of the fun stuff that can happen in life too?
Mm-hmm.
Or just simply finding ways to appreciate what you have as well. You could be poor, but you don't want to be like, oh, I wish I lived in that, 12-bedroom house a few blocks down the road, when you have a perfectly nice place yourself. It may be a studio apartment, but there are people that don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
It's appreciating what you got is not a bad thing at all.
No.
And of course, if we go back into the show's archives, we talk about one of the creators on the show, Eric Monte. The Florida Evans, the mother character on the show, was the maid on the TV show Maude, and they ended up spinning her character off into Good Times. But Eric Monte was able to take aspects of his own life, like he lived in the actual tenement complex in Chicago that family lived in.
Mm-hmm.
And things like that. It's definitely go back into the show's archives, and also just on your own. If you're hearing about Eric Monte from us for the first time, do some research on the guy. He deserves a lot more credit than what he's been given for the types of entertainment like Good Times that he helped bring to the world.
Yeah, I really liked Good Times.
All right. I'm not a huge fan myself, but again, sitcoms are either going to be hit or miss with me. Jimmy Walker was probably one of the detriments of one reason why I did not necessarily care for the show myself. But having said that, finding out that, he was a person who helped give one Mr. David Letterman one of his first writing gigs in Hollywood, soft spot in my heart.
Sure.
Yeah, Jimmy Walker had both Jay Leno and David Letterman writing jokes for him.
Wow.
Yeah, but Dave, I will say this: Dave was always appreciative of that and made it a policy on any show that he had that if Jimmy Walker had a project to promote, all he had to do was call and he would get a spot on the show.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to say about Good Times?
No.
I'm going to go on to my next choice here. I was thinking of adding something else completely different, but I couldn't help but put this theme song on there. It's created by one Lalo Schifrin, who was responsible for the music from the classic movies Bullet, Dirty Harry, and Cool Hand Luke.
Oh, wow.
It is the theme song to Mission Impossible. Now, Tom Cruise has prostituted that franchise for the longest time. Those movies have nothing to do with the original premise of Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible was not about bombast. It was about stealth. It was about fooling people. It was trickery. It was just one hell of a great show. Great episodic show as well. They didn't really have storylines carry over from episode to episode or season to season, but just again another great premise of a spy team going out of their way to do right in the world.
Go Spies.
Yes, yes. Not like that Tom Cruise. I hate those movies. I hate those movies.
Really? I like them.
I
They're like some of the. I don't like action movies, as you know, but they're always, to me, they're very intricate. And they have like lots of intricate things happening that make them exciting.
I don't care. I just hate what Tom Cruise has done to that franchise. Because it's if he called it anything but Mission Impossible, maybe I could climb on board. But it's not Mission Impossible. It's not.
You are having some childhood association thing happening. I think if you were more rational about it, you would recognize that the theme song doesn't really matter.
It matters to me, damn it. Any thoughts on Mission Impossible for you? The TV show, do you remember that?
No, I never watched the TV show at all. Hmm.
Interesting. Yeah, maybe it probably would not be something that I think you would be into. Let's put it that way. It's not something I would put because on Pluto TV there's a Mission Impossible channel that plays all the old episodes.
Oh.
Also, too, fun fact, in 1988 they had a writer's strike. And Mission Impossible was temporarily brought back as, they still called it Mission Impossible, but they were able to do that because all they ended up doing was taking the scripts from the old show and changing some of the names of the characters to have them be like new characters. But Peter Graves, Jim Phelps, was still the head of the IMF, the Impossible Mission Force. And, the iconic, this message will self-destruct in 5 seconds was still there.
Nice.
Anyway, how about you dive into your number 4 choice?
Okay, my number 4 choice is from one of my favorite TV shows ever, and that is the Game of Thrones. And I like to call this song the Wiener Song because it was featured on South Park in the series of episodes where the kids are playing Game of Thrones, basically. And it involves the Black Friday sale at the mall. And so when I think of the song now, I think of that. They go to George R. Martin's house, and he has a choir who sings the theme song, but they changed the lyrics all to Wiener. So it's like, Wiener, 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 Wiener. What a great theme song. And, the titles for that show are also awesome with the 3D model of the different city and like the map. Great show. Great song. Rousing.
Never watched it.
I can't believe you haven't watched it.
I don't like fantasy.
It's not fantasy.
There are dragons in it. How is it not fantasy?
It's not fantasy. The story's not fantasy. The story is one of the sort of primeval stories of power and control, and how people are either true to or not true to each other, and what kind of political consequences that has.
But do they have a machine gun opening the theme song? No, they don't.
No, but they have lots of sword fighting.
Mm.
You like sword fighting?
No.
No. They have, wrestling. Okay.
Yeah, just not my thing.
You should try it at least, I think.
No, I have tried it.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, just tried a little bit of the first episode and was just like, nope.
Okay, fair enough. Fair
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah, you mean, yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna put on some wrestling. Yeah, I don't want to watch his sword fighting stuff. Yeah, that's me.
Pretty much.
Yeah. All right, shall I go on to my last choice?
Yes, please.
There is a fifth dimension, beyond that which is known to man. It is a dimension as vast as space and as timeless as infinity. It is the middle ground between light and shadow, between science and superstition, and it lies between the pit of man's fears and the summit of his knowledge. This is the dimension of imagination. It is an area which we call the Twilight Zone.
Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. Da-da-da.
What a great theme song. What a great show. It's kind of a versatile format, too, in the sense that, the movie was not so successful, but for reasons that are unique, let's put it that way. But you had the original run of the show in the late 50s, early 60s with Rod Serling. You had it come back briefly in the mid 80s in syndication. You had it come back in the early 2000s on UPN for a couple of years. And then when the Paramount Plus app dropped, they had Jordan Peele bring his version of the Twilight Zone onto that streaming app there. But so many classic stories. Like my favorite, it's always going to be Nightmare at 20,000 Feet.
Yeah, the gremlin.
Yeah. Whether it be the William Shatner version on the TV show or the John Lithgow version on the movie, that especially the movie, the first two segments of that, the ones from John Landis and Steven Spielberg, you can miss, but the Joe Dante and George Miller sections of that movie are just top notch. Great cheesy fun. But again, what a great theme song, and like it's even just humming that do 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 do. You get that you get that vibe that the Twilight Zone was able to bring. And one thing too that I will always have much respect for is that the reason Rod Serling went into speculative fiction like this, sci-fi type stuff, was that he was able to tell more stories that way about what was happening in modern life, but because it was told in a sci-fi way, he didn't have to have it edited. Like there are monsters on Maple Street, I think it's called, to where a neighborhood gets riled up and think that there are aliens coming to kill them, but then they all start fighting with each other, and the whole premise is to not do that. It's a type of deal. But he was able to talk so much about society on that show, which is another reason why I think it resonates.
Yeah, because really society just keeps having the same problems over and over and over again.
Yeah, we're not going to come to a utopia, but do I think it's possible if people put a little thought into it? Do I think things could be better? I think they can. And it just takes constant fighting. With yourself, to make sure that you don't get caught into that rut, and you're not going to be like one of those people with a pitchfork trying to get your neighbor when you should not be doing that. But what a great show. It even had a radio show that was on the radio in the 2000s with Stacy Keach being the narrator on that. But again, classic episodes. But if you don't have any other thoughts on Twilight Zone, how about you dip into your last choice?
Okay, my last choice, which I hope you will appreciate, is for the Muppet Show, the original on television Muppet Show. Such a good theme song. captures that energy of a stage show, because they're like going backstage and talking about time to go on stage and everybody's getting ready and props are flying around, scenery.
Statler and Waldorf, I love their little section of, why do we always come here? I guess we'll never know. It's like a kind of torture to have to watch the show.
You do a very good version.
Yes. Classic show. I used to watch that show every morning before I went off to kindergarten with my mother. It was on repeat. Nice. And it was actually a show filmed in England. If you remember on the original run, they would have ITV, the ITV logo pop up. That is a British television company.
Yeah, they were the first people who would produce it, I think.
Mm-hmm. They were. And actually, the Muppet Show happened because Jim Henson's Muppets failed on the first season of Saturday Night Live.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't even know this until the DVDs of the original Saturday Night Live seasons came out. But the Muppets were on the original season of Saturday Night Live. They were not well received by the cast members. John Belushi used to call them the mucking Fuppets, But Frank Oz later, I did read an interview with Frank Oz to where he talked about, hindsight being 2020, he understood that what the Muppets were trying to do was kind of different than what the rest of the Saturday Night Live group was doing. So it was not a good match.
Right.
So he didn't take anything personally, but classic show. I loved the Muppets movie from 2011 because to me that movie was just a love letter to the TV show. Mm-hmm. But do you have a favorite episode of the Muppet Show?
The one or more with John Denver.
Oh God.
John Denver just had a Muppet spirit. Like he was it should have been an unofficial Muppet.
Well, I remember it may have been a Christmas special or something like that, but you got that, him and the Muppets got that stupid earworm of a song, she'll be coming round the mountain when she comes. And oh God, I hated that for the longest. I mean, I still hate it, but, it took me a while to get that out of my head. Thanks, John Denver. What I love about the show too is Henson was pretty brave with some of the guest choices that he had on there. Like Alice Cooper was a guest.
Yeah, whoa.
And this was at a time to where most parents were kind of scared of, letting their kids anywhere near anything that said Alice Cooper. Mm-hmm. He was still the shock rocker at that particular time. But Henson saw that he had something that he could contribute to, the Muppet audience. And I think while the show is definitely a kid's show, it was still funny enough for adults that, the adults could be there and have a laugh with their kids.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
In prime time, right?
I believe so, yeah. It was definitely a syndication show in America, but during its initial run, I think, it was probably on what would be now Fox stations, because before Fox came around, there were just a bunch of independent stations that used to be part of the DuPont network. Mm-hmm. Like in Grand Rapids, for instance, the Fox station there, WXMI, Channel 17, just used to be an independent station. And they would just, essentially play reruns all day. But that channel used to be part of the DuPont network.
I see.
Yeah. The more you know.
The more you know about radio stations.
TV stations.
Oh, TV stations.
Yeah.
Or radio stations.
Yes. Or the Motorola, Victrola. You spin the record. Spin what? All right. Anything else about the Muppet Show?
No, love the Muppets.
All right, so how about we take a moment to let one of our friends in the podcasting world talk about their show?
That sounds like a great idea.
Damn right it is. Hang tight, everybody. We'll be right back.
Town Podcast is a podcast that features your town's dark, wild, and sometimes unbelievable past that will have you thinking there is no way that really happened here.
Matt, Meg, and Zach dust off the books and hit the streets and the occasional nursing home to unveil your town's past.
From small towns to where we live to big cities before they were what they are today, this is your town, your stories.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Before we wrap things up this week, I recently celebrated my 1-year anniversary at the doggy daycare I work at.
Yay! Congratulations.
Yes, quite happy. I'm quite happy for all of the relationships with the dogs that I've made over my time there. It feels like this is really like the first job where I've ever had where I felt like I'm actually doing some good. Because when you work for a big corporation, you don't always see that. You may be doing a great job, but when you got so many other people that are working there, it becomes more cutthroat at that point. But just some of the dogs are amazing. Like there's this one boxer who loves to lick my chin every time she's there. I mean, she constantly barks, but, if I call her up, she'll hop on her hind legs, start licking my chin. There's this little gray puffball that's just an anxious mess. And, when she first started going there, all she would do was just bark and look at the, exit. It's like, I want to go home type of bark. But now I got her comfortable to the point to where if she starts getting a little anxious, she'll actually come to me for pets.
Aw.
Things like that. There's one dog too, this pit bull. She has a bad habit at times of when there are younger dogs around, she will want to mount them, and she's not romantic about it. Like she will get mean if the dog tries to like go away or anything like that. But over the past year, I've gotten her to the point to where, if she does do that, I just have to say her name and then she'll stop.
Whoa.
And I feel really good about that because like it was, she was one of the ones that, really hammered home the importance of, when you have a pet and you are doing some correcting, do not forget positive reinforcement. Because, when you do what I do, if you're working with 70 plus dogs every day, it can be easy to forget that. You just see the bad thing happening, you want that bad thing to stop. But if you don't throw in some times to where you're, doing something as simple as saying sit, and then they sit, you pet them, you go, oh my God, so great, thank you, good dog type of deal. But learned so much from her. There's another dog that I kind of compared to like, because like the daycare is a lot like school. And you have your cliques. And there's this one dog there that, liked me pretty much from the start. And he's kind of like the high school quarterback that can be friends with the nerds and the jocks as well. Type of deal, yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. He's cool. And then, of course, the bowling ball, the one who injured me. He makes me earn my paycheck every day I work with him, but I've seen him since before he was a year old. Like I first started working there, he was like 8-9 months old at that particular time. And, a year later, like he's almost to that point to where he may mellow out. Hopefully, cross fingers. But just seeing him grow up has been awesome, and I think for me, like what I'm seeing is that, they're dogs, but I have to take the same mindset that an educator would have at like a human daycare. You can't dismiss other dogs. You can't be mean to some dogs and nice to other dogs as well. If you are not there to do your best for every single dog that comes in through that door, then you should not be there. And there's also one more, and then I'll wrap up my story here. There's this big, huge black dog that was there, and they usually, when I first started, he would always just be in the front group. The front group is where some of the smaller or more quiet or shyer dogs would be, and he would just always be, just sleeping by the door. That's all he would do. And then if you had to say his name to go home, he would just say, okay, bye, walk out the door. But what I started doing is making it a point to go and start petting him. And then he started really loving that, to the point to where like I would pet him and then walk away, and then he'd quickly get in front of me to make sure I couldn't walk away. And he would get more pets. And I finally got him to the point to where, he voluntarily would walk into the main group, and he will start playing with other dogs as well now, which was cool to see. On the home front, I did find out that his parents did end up buying him a little kitten. So he has a kitten brother or sister. But that's also helped bringing him out of a shell. I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I feel, the work I did help him open up a little bit, because even though on the one hand, for what I do there, having a dog like him is great, because if you have a lot of other stuff going on, you don't have to worry about dogs like him. But I want to worry about dogs like him. It's like they're under my care, so why not try and, give them something to be happy about?
You're so sweet.
Yeah. It's a living.
Yep.
It's a living. But as time will go on, I'm sure we'll have more stories about the dogs. But speaking of stories, in a couple of weeks here, you're going to be in Deutschland.
That is correct. I am heading over the pond to go see what's going on in Berlin, Germany, and also Cologne. And should be a great time.
Now, I know you're going to see a friend, but when you are there, I'm sure you have some sightseeing ideas set up.
Absolutely. And some things I want to do, like in Berlin, I definitely want to go clubbing, because Berlin is like the birthplace of techno and the club scene. And you have to like stand in line, and maybe you get let in or you don't get let in. Like, it's like a real deal.
All I'm thinking of is that Mike Myers sketch from Saturday Night Live, Dieter from Sprockets.
Yes, exactly. Dieter from Sprockets.
Such my liebe monkey.
So we've got to figure out how to get into these kinds of places. Like, what do we need to wear, etc. Also, they have a very strong tradition of hot springs, like many of them going back to Roman times, Roman springs, but and I'm sure before then. But they have ruins of Roman baths and other types of hot springs. So, gonna go to a hot springs that is developed that's called Liquid Rom. And it's a techno club / hot tub experience.
Okay.
There's like lasers and DJs, but the whole place is just like a giant, like warm pool.
Yeah, and the reason the water's moving is because of the music, not because of any sort of jets or anything.
Yeah, there are no jets. But then there's also like sauna, a steam room, and a lounge. And so it's a big tradition there, the hammam, the Turkish bath kind of experience.
Any historical places you're thinking of sightseeing?
Well, so Berlin obviously used to be half Eastern Bloc and half Western Bloc, and it was actually more than that originally after World War II when it was partitioned. But eventually, it became like the U.S. section and the Soviet section. And it's in the middle of what was Eastern Germany. And so it was this very small enclave of American, British, German people who were not part of that country. So like a little dot in what was otherwise a big Eastern Germany. There's a little spot of Western Germany there. And so, very excited about seeing the remnants of the wall, which are all decorated with murals now.
I've actually seen part of the Berlin Wall.
Really? At
the Ford Museum in Grand Rapids, Michigan, they actually had a slab of the Berlin Wall shipped there.
Oh, that's very interesting. I'm excited to see that. I'm excited to see other street art. So Berlin is like the capital of street art. And so there's just lots of graffiti to look at. They have a whole island of museums including a museum. It's not on the island, but they have a DDR museum.
Dance Revolution.
No, Democratic, whatever the East Germany.
Okay.
It's an East Germany museum. So like Soviet things in a museum. And so I'm interested in seeing that. They have, you can go to the square where the Nazi book burnings happened. There is a memorial to the murdered Jews of Europe. There is a big park called the Tiergarten that was used to be the royal hunting grounds. It's an interesting city. You know, most of it was destroyed in World War II, so there isn't a lot of old architecture. It's a lot of really modern architecture in the middle of old Europe.
I will say that, you know, when it comes to the aftermath of World War II, that is one smart thing that the United States did in terms of when it comes to, in this particular case, Western Germany and also Japan, you know, doing what they could to help get those countries back up and running as quickly as they possibly could. Like at the end of World War I, the one big reason why issues ended up continuing on was that Germany, they lost the war and were just told to suck it. And, you know, they ended up having a lot of problems, which helped bring about the, you know, Hitler and the Nazis and all that stuff. But, you know, every now and then the United States has good ideas.
Yeah, and you know, that idea was the idea of one General George Marshall. And you and I both lived in Vancouver, Washington when we met. And there is, on the Fort Vancouver property, is the Marshall House, which is where General Marshall was stationed for some period of his career. So I've had tea there in his old house.
All right.
Yeah. But pretty cool.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I am happy for you getting a chance to go to Deutschland.
Yes.
Channeling my freshman year of high school.
I'm also going to go on a high-speed rail express.
Ooh.
Yeah. Goes really fast. Fast.
That's right. I'm sure you'll have lots of pictures you'll be posting on the social media.
Certainly.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the meantime, does that mean we'll have any sort of blips in terms of being able to present you, our friends at home, new episodes of Friends Talking Nerdy? No.
Of course not. Of course not. We wouldn't let that happen.
Damn right. You will miss us. Think of the outspreading of emotion if we missed a week.
I know.
You know, like...
Well, what would people do?
I don't know. I don't know.
We're here for you.
That's right.
We're not going to leave you without episodes.
We love you. All right. Anything else you want to say to our friends at home?
No. Just hope you have a great week.
Sprechen Sie Deutsche, baby. That's right.
Done.
All right. Each Monday, we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
Auf Wiedersehen. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.